think to Wilson Home. I'd had 2 months there in my last 6 months, and there was a Mrs. Townsend there, Gwen Townsend I think, who taught us a tremendous amount. There was one other physio working with me there, Prue Miller, now Prue Hillaby, who's still in Auckland. She will remember quite a lot. What she might remember is that we lived in Remuera. We flatted together. Prue, now Hillaby, Barbara Joyce she became. 3 of us flatted in Remuera, and Prue and I had to get to the Wilson Home by 8 o'clock. And Prue was a night person. I was an early morning person, and there was no problem. She thought I was absolutely daft because I had to be in bed by 9 o'clock or I fell asleep. But she could not wake up in the morning. So at least 2 mornings out of the 5 she'd missed the ferry going over to the Wilson Home. But she was forgiven by Mrs. Townsend somehow or other. But Mrs. Townsend taught us an awful lot, a lot of it in all sorts of little incidentals as we went along. And I wrote a lot of them down, just interesting facts about children. But the whole of the Wilson Home, I think it was, the impression was that everybody worked together. The matron was a Miss Falconbridge. You will have heard about her, I should think. Again, very tall. Gracious person. But everybody worked together, the gardeners and the cooks and the people who cleaned the place and the school teachers and the physios and the nurses. If ever they were short in one area, everybody would help. No, we didn't go out and help the gardeners really, but the gardeners helped us. And the carpenters round the place. If you needed some equipment for the children that could be made, the carpenters would go and find a few bits of wood, a few bits of metal, and do it. You didn't write requisitions and things. And on fine days, Mrs. Townsend would often say, well, let's go down to the beach. And at that time there was a narrow little path, I don't know what there is now, fairly narrow path through the bush, going down to the sea. And we'd piggyback the children, and that's where some of the gardeners and the men's staff would come in and help to carry the children down. And I can remember one little boy with his crutches would galump across the sand, which was difficult with his crutches. As soon as he hit the water, he just hurtled his crutches and swam and loved it. And then that was just having the whole morning down by the sea, enjoying it. It was all part of what we did. Nurses were down there too. You know, the teachers came and helped sometimes. It just was a feeling that everybody worked together. At one stage they had a terrific outbreak of jaundice, hepatitis, which I got too, and had about 6 weeks in Auckland Hospital. It was the infective hepatitis. What's that now? A, B, whichever. It was just called an infective hepatitis. Some of the children were terribly ill. That took quite a long time to clear up from there. A lot of the staff got it. Yes. Okay. The fire brigade people used to come quite often for sort of picnic days and sports days and days like that. They'd join in having games with the children because, I mean, it was because the men were the sort of men that enjoyed being with children, but the main point was they wanted the children to know them, trust them, so that if there were ever a fire, the children wouldn't be frightened, they'd be with friends the minute they came in. So we had some wonderful picnic days with the firemen there, which I think was again part of the whole community which you had at that stage. I can remember Prue and I had rivalry. Again, it sounds sort of silly, but it was part of the enjoyment of working. were quite determined that each of us were determined our child was going to do much better than the other one's child. And it brought home something, I think, to both of us, that you couldn't go by first impressions. You'd have a little girl. I can remember two in particular. I had one very a cerebral palsy child, very badly affected, who really didn't seem to be able to cope with much at all. And Prue had a very, very pretty little girl with a few social. She managed fairly well socially. She could talk a little bit more. My child could talk not at all. And we were both sure that, as I said, that our child was going to get better more quickly, in the days when you thought they were going to get better quickly. And the very pretty one who could talk and socialise really didn't develop at all. And my little very badly affected one learnt an awful lot. It was nothing to. I don't think it was anything to do with Prue's ability and my ability. It was just what was in those children, and we were very young. We hadn't dealt with enough children to pick it out. And Mrs. Townsend had quite often said, now, however badly affected a child is with anything, they've all got something special about them, which was true. And you'd find around the hospital, I don't know whether other people have said it, but each child had some member of that staff to whom they were special for some reason. It wasn't planned. It would just happen. And I hope that other hospitals were like that, but I don't think they were. You know, it might have been one of the cooking people, because you knew each other. We all helped with meals and things at times. But each child did have at least one person to whom they were special, which has nothing to do with physiotherapy, but it was to do with the Wilson Home atmosphere, I think.